The differences between the people of Missouri and the Saints seemed to be an obstacle too large to overcome. Once again, it led to violence.
They take Edward Partridge, who is the bishop in Missouri, and they tar and feather him and a man named Charles Allen in the public square. And this is like a warning that you better leave.
While Joseph is trying to marshal the men and the means to be able to go to their support, did he send any instructions to the saints?
Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints represent a faith practiced by millions, a faith which has also inspired its share of controversy.
I think if you look at Brigham Young's whole life, well, it's a conundrum.
I'm Camry Bagley-Fox, and together with John Wilson and Professor Daniel Peterson, we work to uncover unexpected twists in the character of a man that we thought we already knew.
I've heard about the persecution that early church members faced my whole life. But this episode was giving me a little different perspective as I contemplated what they really went through. Maybe my troubles aren't as bad as I think. I continued my discussion with Matt Godfrey from the Church History Department.
So you have a group of men from the mob that come to the church leaders in Missouri and they say, look, we don't want you here, and unless you agree to leave, we're going to keep these attacks up. And so the church leaders agree at that time in July of 1833 that half of the members of the church will leave Jackson County by the end of the year, and the other half will leave by April of 1834. And so the violence stops after that, after they've entered into this agreement.
Joseph is shaken.
Of course he is. This is not at all what he was expecting, right? And is this the first instance of violence we have against the Saints?
No, it's really not. There had been some minor incidents in New York State. Then remember, about a year before, Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon had been tarred and feathered in Hiram, Ohio. But he wasn't expecting anything like this in Missouri, and I think there's a difference. Violence against himself for his claims.
He can handle a little more, but to see it happen to other people who are trusting him and following him.
That's right. And I would think that would put an extra burden on him. It would on me. If I'm thinking, okay, I get it, coming against me for things I've said, but now you're going against people whose only sin is they're following me, they're trusting me.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for that in a way.
Yeah. Right.
So he seeks a revelation, and he receives an answer that's recorded as Doctrine and Covenants Section 98, verse 16. It says, "Therefore renounce war and proclaim peace, and seek diligently to turn the hearts of the children to their fathers, and the hearts of the fathers to the children." He urges the saints in Missouri to be patient, to rebuild the printing office, and to seek legal ways to recover their losses. I think it's interesting, too, that the idea of turning the hearts of the fathers to the children and children of the fathers is connected with this idea of peace, idea of unifying everybody.
Right.
Yeah, and that in some ways you could say that the instruction to establish Zion in the place is not to do so at the expense of the local people.
Right.
That the unifying effort is going to have to involve making peace.
Zion's going to involve not just Zion among the saints,
Right.
but a Zion among those who are different from
A
them.
peaceful relation with the people.
You know, Abraham Lincoln had something interesting to say at one point on this. Someone approached him and said, well, you know, in the war with the South and in the conflict with the South, shouldn't we be seeking to destroy our enemies? And his response was, well, but in a way, don't I destroy my enemies by making them my friends?
Yeah.
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 I love that.
I have to imagine it was a hard instruction to hear.
I think it probably was, but the Lord rarely instructs his people to go to war. And so in this case, Orson Hyde and W.W. Phelps are sent off to Governor Daniel Dunklin seeking redress of their grievances.
Dunklin essentially tells the saints you need to go through the court system. But he does tell them towards the latter part of 1833 that he could be willing to call up the state militia to protect saints who go into Jackson County to testify in any kind of court hearing there. And he said, and if some saints wanted to move back to their homes at that time, the state militia could protect them too as they're moving back. But none of the saints are going to take them up on that offer because they know how much people in Jackson County hate them, and they think, well, if we just go back in there, yeah, the state militia can protect us till we're in our homes, but then when they leave, they're just going to kick us out again.
Sure.
Church members at the time, they had legally purchased land there. It's not like they had gone in and stolen land from people. They'd gone in, they'd followed all the laws, they'd purchased the land legally. And so they start to think, why should we have to leave? We have every right to be here, just like these other citizens do. And so they start to explore some legal options and get legal counsel about how they could stay in Jackson County. And around the 1st of October in 1833, the church leaders basically say, we're not going to leave. You know, we feel like we have every right to be here as well.
The town leaders and independents are furious.
Yeah, and Parley P. Pratt records in his journal about the incident. He said between 40 and 50, many of whom were armed with guns, demolished 10 dwelling houses. And in the midst of shrieks and screams of women and children, whipped and beaten in a savage manner several of the men, and with horrid threats, frightened women and children into the wilderness. The scene was indescribable, and I'm sure would have melted the hearts of any people on earth except our blind oppressors and a prejudiced and ignorant community. In short, every member of the society was driven from the county. Stacks of wheat were burned, household goods plundered, and every kind of property lost. And at length, no less than 203 houses burned.
You know, as you're reading that, that's not an account that I've ever heard.
I haven't either.
And I think there's power in hearing those painful accounts. Obviously, it's not fun to listen to what happened to the saints, but it got me thinking about the refugees that we have in our world right now and those who are seeking asylum from horrible situations. And I think, in a sense, turning to our fathers, turning to our ancestors, the pioneers, and learning from their stories helps us to open our hearts to those who are experiencing similar situations right now.
While Joseph is trying to marshal the men and the means to be able to go to their support, did he send any instructions to the saints?
He did, yeah. So he writes a few letters to church leaders in Missouri. One of these letters is actually one of my favorite Joseph Smith documents because Edward Partridge, who's again the leader of the church in Missouri, has asked Joseph for help. And what are we supposed to do? Am I supposed to sell the land here in Jackson County? Am I supposed to keep it? What do you want us to do? And in this letter that Joseph writes back to Edward Partridge in December of 1833, he tells Edward, there are two things that I've asked the Lord about, and the Lord is not telling me. One is why he allowed the saints to be expelled from Jackson County, and the second one is, how are we supposed to get our land back? And he tells Edward in this letter, this thing is held back from me. The only thing the Lord is telling me is, be still and know that I am God. And I think that's pretty remarkable because here you have Joseph, the great prophet of this restoration, who's saying, I'm asking God and he's not telling me. And I like that personally because I've had experiences in my life where I feel like I've asked the Lord for help or for answers to questions and the answer doesn't come immediately, you know, and sometimes it makes me feel like what's wrong with me, you know. So to have Joseph be able to say, the Lord's not telling me, is kind of a remarkable thing.
And you're in this condition where you're driven, the persecution hasn't ended, it's disorderly, you've lost all your materials. Not only that, you're 1,000+ miles away from the headquarters and leadership of the church. You're on the frontier of America. It's like no one is there. Nothing is going to help. And I'm sure they probably were just getting ready to say, well, I guess we fight back. There's no redress. Let's go for it.
After all, you know, these are the immediate descendants of people who'd fought in the Revolutionary War. And their natural idea was, we're Americans, we have rights, and we fight for them if they're threatened. It's what we do. It's how our country was born. But Joseph isn't going to be guided necessarily by secular ideas. He seeks and he receives another revelation.
And
Which we will learn about in the next episode.
Fair enough.
okay.
Join us for our next episode, where we find out about Joseph's revelation and the resulting journey.
They're driven from Missouri, they're homeless, they're destitute.
Yeah.
And the question was, what did they do about the situation? And you said, wait.
And you also mentioned something about Joseph
Yeah.
seeking revelation on the situation.
He was seeking revelation. He wanted an answer of what to do, but he didn't get an answer.
Really?
You know, it's just not altogether unusual. The Lord's timetable is not ours. And so we may want an answer immediately, but He isn't necessarily going to give it to us immediately.
And surely this was a point in time where the saints were like, if ever there was a time for revelation. Make sure you join us next time